Alrighty, hello Treehousers! I'm just gonna make sure sound's working. Yay, okay. I always gotta double check just to be safe. Welcome! Happy Monday. It is the 22nd of June. If, like me, some of your days are starting to get a little muddled together, it is June 22nd. For those that got to celebrate, or those that celebrated Father's Day, oh, let's try that again. For everyone, happy Father's Day to all the fathers and father figures out there. I hope you all were able to celebrate and have a lovely time yesterday, as much as you could during our current situation out here in the world. Um, Besides that, we are going to be working on the home automation app program today. Sorry, my mind is just all over the place this morning, or this afternoon for me, so bear with me while I try to get it kicked in and working for what we're working on today. So we're working on the home automation app. Quick recap of what we've been doing. We created our design. So this is our design for our app once it gets finished. Right now, so that all of you can follow along with me, it's going to be a web app. So it's going to be something that you can run locally, and it'll pop up on your local server, port 8000 or whatever. So we'll be making it that way so that everyone can follow along with me. And then when we get to the end of the project, I can talk about some, ways that y'all can take it even further if you want to. But this is our design. Besides that, on the programming side, we got into, there it is, weather.py, and we have our API connection to the weather API, and it saves our weather data in a nice little tuple. Comes out with today's info, tomorrow's info, and then day after that and the day after that. So that is the weather side. And then 2 weeks ago, we worked on the Google Calendar connection. So we pulled a lot of this from Google Calendar's documentation. So this goes to Google Calendar, and it grabs my own calendar and grabs the next 2 events coming up. And I have a little setting the data, and it returns a tuple of those 2 events so that I can use it to put into our design. So we have our weather information ready. We have our event calendar information ready. So today we're working on these 2 portions. So this side is our grocery list, and the right side is our to-do list. So as a reminder, our grocery list has a title, and it has the option for having extra details. So if there's like a specific type of bread that needs to be bought, or a specific type of yogurt or anything like that, then it'll have a space for details. And then if there are no extra details, it'll just show the title. On our to-do side of things, we are going to be creating a to-do list, and the to-do list just has the name, the title of what needs to happen, and then a single letter that represents the location. And so I'm trying to think, I might build in, like, when you come here to add something to this list, like a breakdown of what each letter means, and then you just save a single letter. That might be easier. So we'll work with that when we're building out today. So what we're building today for these 2 pieces is we're building the database and the models for the database. So what that means is a database, when you go to save stuff to it, you have to give it a model for what that information is going to look like, so it knows how to save and interact with that information. And it just then makes it easier for when you go to pull database out of the database. When you go to pull data out of the database, it then knows, this is a text field, this is a date field, and it already has that kind of built in. So that's what we're going to be working on today. Now, I did kind of go back and forth with whether or not to use, Django or Flask and things like that. And I'll be honest, I ran out of time to really dig into Django myself because Python's still a new language for me. So I was digging into Django a little bit, trying to figure out how their database connections work, and I wasn't able to get that far. So for right now, we are going to use Phee for our database connection, and then Flask when we go to create the actual, HTML connection and all that jazz for our templates. So that is the game plan right now. So if you're excited for Django, I'm so sorry. I just ran out of time. I really wanted to learn it just for myself because it's a good framework to know, but I will still be learning it. I just didn't have time to get it all put together in my brain before our live stream today. So we're going to stick with Phee and Flask because I've used those before, so that way we can use it together. But we're going to get building. And building out today may not take the whole hour that I usually set aside. So just as a heads up, today's stream may be a little bit shorter than usual. I kind of want to do it in chunks where we kind of talk about, like today we're just going to talk about Phee, and then next week when we start to getting into the reading and writing and things like that, we'll get into Flask with our routes, so that we have the ability to get our items, update them, and delete them. So we're going to focus primarily on these top 3 to-dos for to-dos and grocery. So creating the database model, creating the database, and then setting up the ability to add items to the database. So those are the 6 to-dos that we're working on today. And then we'll work on starting Flask and these to-dos in a month from now. So that is the plan. Let me clear this so that way I can pull it up a little bit. Awesome. So we're going to start with our to-dos, and I'm going to pull up Pee-wee's documentation. So go home. So my mouth is just not wanting to make words today. So if you Google Phee, you're probably going to find Pee-wee Herman because that's what comes up. But if you do a comma Python and then search, it'll be the very first thing when you're Google searching. So the website is docs.peewee-orm.com, and then I believe the rest of this stuff fills out on its own. So just to test to make sure, yeah, all you need is docs.peewee-orm.com. So if you're following along with me, if you download the GitHub repository, you're right where I am right now, which has these lovely to-dos in here and ready to go. So that is where we are at right now. So the first thing I'm going to do is both of my database files are going to have a .db because they're a database file instead of py because that's a Python file. And I find I'm not going to put them in a folder. Instead, I'm just going to put them in my main directory. So I'm going to have todos.db, and I'm going to have glist for grocery list.db. And the reason why I'm saving those in my gitignore is so that when y'all go to download this, after we finish this up today, it'll create brand new databases on your machine instead of trying to bring mine in, which can sometimes cause issues. A lot of the times when I go to run a program again and it created a database, I usually delete the database and then rerun everything. In my experience, it just tends to save some bugs and save some weird things that can happen. So that's why I like to ignore my database. And that way you can play around with the database on your end as much as you want without any stuff on my end stopping you or creating issues. So added to our gitignore are 2 databases. So I just put the file names in there, and then when they pop up, they'll be grayed out like some of these other ones to show that they are not going to be added to our GitHub. So to get started with Phee, first, gotta install it. So because we're using pip environment, we need to do pip env install Phee, and it's double E's on both sides. It's going to take a little second, so get to hang out together. Hopefully it doesn't take too long. It didn't take too long earlier this morning. There it goes. Like, there's still a little bit of something left there. Good. Okay. Awesome. I'm going to go ahead and hit clear because it's already in there and I don't want to worry about clogging up my terminal. So now that we have Phee installed, just like all of our other installs, we need to import it. So the way that Phee works, I'm going to pop up Phee on its own. So they did pip because we're using a virtual environment. We did pip environment install Phee. See where it says quick start. Maybe it's under here. Okay, there we go. So the way that Phee works is it wants to do always from Phee import star. If you haven't seen this star before, that means import everything. So every package, every little piece of code that Phee has, it's going to import all of them. That's just the way that Phee works. It's kind of a pro and con. It makes it easy because you don't have to remember specific imports that you need to bring in. But it's also a con because it's going to bring in imports that you're not using as well. So from Phee import star, do a couple spaces here, and save. Cool. Oh, and it's not doing it on mine. One thing you might see, it's not doing it on mine, and I'm not sure why. It could just be how my Pylint is working. But this can sometimes throw problems on my other computer right here with my code that I'm copying over. It has 100 problems, and essentially all the problems just say, I'll read off an example in case you, it just says unused import collections from blah blah blah, and it's going to have a bunch of those because you're not using all of the things that you're importing. So if you run into where you come here and it just says, you know, literally 100 issues where, you know, something's been imported but is not being used, that's just how it goes with Phee. So you can ignore those if they show up as problems here under your problems tab. Everything will be just fine, I promise. So that is how you import Phee. I'm going to go ahead. Oh, sorry. Dog hair. That wasn't fun. That's what happens when you have a fluffy dog. So on the grocery side, we're going to do the same thing. So from Phee import star and save. So this is just as a reminder in case you didn't see what files I'm working in, todos.py and grocery.py. So grocery.py is our grocery list stuff, and todos.py is our to-do list stuff. So part one done. We've imported Phee and installed it. So let's come back over here. So the next thing we need to do is we need to set up our database, and this right here where it says people, oh, it's kind of small. Let me zoom in. I'm going to check on this screen. There we go. Hopefully that's good. Let me know, or let Karen, our awesome Karen is in the chat with y'all right now. So if that is still too small, just let Karen know in chat. Just post something in chat, it's still too small, and she'll let me know so I can zoom in some more. And please do that because I want to make sure that everyone can see well enough as we go through. So if I ever forget to do that, you know, just post in the chat that, you know, I should zoom in and I'll do it. So anyways, the next step is to create this database variable, and we're walking through exactly what Phee's documentation is telling us to do to create our models. So it's going to be a SQLite database. SQL databases are probably something everyone's familiar with. They look like a normal old table. They work like a normal old table that you would see in Excel or Sheets or whatever. So, you have all your columns and then all your entries that you add to it create rows. So we're going to create a model, and it's essentially going to say the name of each column that's going in. And when we create this database, the name here is going to be the actual name of your database. So I like to keep it similar to what we're doing. Actually, I'll do this. Um, so it's kind of both of those things. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to do it in all. Oops. Accidentally hit the caps lock. Database. I'm going to do it in all caps. In Python, all caps means a variable you shouldn't change. That's kind of a going pattern, if you will. So the database is going to equal SQLite database. Oops, not database. Database. And we're going to call this todos.db. Cool. Okay, so we have our database, and we're going to do the same exact thing over in grocery.py. So I'm going to kind of build them together as we go through today so that we kind of end them at the same time, because the steps are essentially the same. So on our grocery side, same thing. Database. Make sure I'm spelling it correctly. Equals SQLite. Keep hitting that caps lock button. Database. Nope. Same, I just can't type and I can't speak today. That's just how today's gonna be. And I was calling this glist.db or grocery list. Okay, so go ahead and save grocery and I'll come back over to to-dos. So if I come over here to our Phee documentation, the next thing is we're going to create a class. And the class, we're going to want to name it something similar to our database because it's our model for the database. And we're going to need to inherit from model, which comes from Phee. And then these are our different fields or our different columns in a table. So let's work on building out that. So we need a class. It's going to be called todos. Needs to bring model. And I believe that needs to be capitalized. Yep, cool. So model. And in our class to-dos, this is where we're going to need to pick our column types. So for the to-dos, let me go back to our design. We have a location and we have a title. So we only have two things that we need to add to our database. So we need title and we need a location. And we need to figure out what kind of fields these are going to be. So same thing if you are used to working in spreadsheets. There's a big difference between a number column and a text column and things like that. So in our documentation, we're going to come up here to models and fields. Oops. And we're going to drop down fields and we want to go to the field types table. So these are all of the different kinds of fields, and we're using a SQLite database. So this table just lets you know, like, this field is not supported, so you can't use that one with SQLite. But integer field, if it's a number, big or small, has floats, it has decimals, it has character fields. Text fields, character fields are something smaller like titles. Text fields are something bigger like descriptions. You have all sorts, date time field versus a date field. So date time would have like a date time or a timestamp, and a date field is just the date. And of course, time field, just the time, etc. So there are quite a few options here. For what we're doing right now, we need, I lost it, character field. So we're going to use a char field as it's written here. for both the title and location. So we're going to go equal char field. Almost sounds like Garfield now that I think about it when you say it out loud. One thing that's making me a little bit nervous is I've imported Phee. Oh, that's how it looks on mine. And usually when you start typing these things, it finds the character field already. So hopefully that means our install and everything isn't going to be wonky. But we'll keep going and we'll see. So that's the start on the to-do side. So we have just two columns that we're going to have, a title column and a location column. Our location's only going to be one letter or one character long, and our title field is probably going to be something small. If we look at our examples from our design, clean floors, feed the dog, clean the couch, dust, things like that. They're really short, so character field will work just fine for these. But if you ever feel like not sure and you want to make sure you have enough space, you can always switch it to a text field, and that'll give you a little bit more space. I think character field's going to be fine, so I'm going to leave it. Then let's do the same thing over on the grocery side. So it's kind of nice that we're doing it twice because it helps solidify it a little bit. So coming down, we need to create a new class. Call this glist. We need to inherit from model. And here we're going to have, if I remember right, we have a title and a description. Let me check mine. Is that what I had? Yep. Title and a description. Okay, so same thing. Title will be the same. Character field. And then description. I'm going to do as a text field, just in case. I mean, you can see my you can see my examples. I have, like, for the peanut butter, get a big one. For the dog, carrots, make sure you get the long ones, not the baby carrots. Get a dark soy sauce. The descriptions aren't like paragraphs of descriptions, but just in case, because it is a description field, I'm going to put it as a text field in the database. So that's just to be safe. I don't think we'll need that much space, but for this instance, because of the word description usually implies the ability to write a lot more, I'll put it as text field. That way it just saves me some headache in the long run in case someone does enter something in the grocery list with like a big description. We're totally fine. So I'm going to put it as text field. Cool. So back over to to-dos. So we have our two columns. Do that. Tab. There we go. Actually go back. Okay. So now you can see, where were we before? Nope, I need to go back again. There we go. So then the next thing we have to add to our class, and this is specific to Phee, we have to have this class meta, and then database equals whatever our database variable that we input earlier has to equal that. So we need to add class meta, and we need to do database equals database. So because they're the same, I can copy this, Control-C or Command-C, depending on what machine you're using. And then on grocery, I can do the same thing. Paste. Save it. Come back over to our to-do. So that's essentially telling it, these are the columns that you're going to have. This is the database that it's going to go into. The data is going into this database, and it's just creating that connection. I'm going to do that, give us some space afterwards. pull up our documentation. Okay, so that's the end of what they give us for just basic database modeling. The one thing I added is a class method. So a class method is a function inside of your class that works on the class itself. Usually when you create a function inside of your class, it works with instances of your class and the class itself. So class method is going to work with our class. So because of that, when we define this function, we're going to go define create to do. So this is going to do our ability to add items to the database. So we're just creating a function that'll let us do that. And so because it's a class method, instead of self, which is usually what you pass into functions inside of a class, the typical pattern is to call it CLS, because you're passing in the class itself and not an instance of the class. And one of these times, maybe we'll dig into some OOP and I can get into what those differences mean a little bit more. But for right now, class method, you need CLS. Regular, method in a class, you need self. So CLS, and then we need to pass in the two things that we're adding to our database, right? So title and location. And then we're going to go CLS dot. So this is going to be on this model, we're going to create a new item in the database. And inside here, we're going to have the title field is going to equal the title argument that we pass in, and the location field is going to equal the location argument that we're passing in. So this is essentially, this title field is going to get the title that I'm passing in, and this location field is going to get the location that I'm passing into this function. So this just makes it a little bit easier to create individual to-dos. So I'm going to, I'm going to type this one individually. So to-dos.py, awesome. I'll give it a little second because we did type a little bit more than we have for the other ones. So we're going to do the same thing on groceries, on the grocery side. So tab, so we need at class method. Oops, hold up, kind of a funky class method. There we go. Define, and this is going to be create, and I'm going to call item for our list. So it is class method, so same thing, CLS, and then we're going to need a title and a description. Then CLS.create, make it sure, okay. And then title equals title. If I spell it correctly, it'll work better. Description equals description. And yes, when I'm spelling things out, sometimes I have to say it like that. So we have our two creation methods, which are class methods, so they're on our model class. So right now, modeling, the model for our database is done. So now we're going to make sure it's working, and we're going to create a method that initializes or, creates our database. So let me save this. Come over here to do. I'm going to do a couple spaces, and we're going to create a method called initialize. So define initialize. Yes. It's going to take no arguments, just be a function. And then inside, we're going to do database.connect. We're going to do database.create to do. No, create tables, sorry. Create tables. And then inside of this, we're telling it that it needs to pull from our to-dos class. So from this to-dos class up here. So we're telling it we're going to connect to this database, and then the tables that are going to be in here is going to be from this model here. So we're telling it to create these columns and create that connection. The other thing that we're going to do is tell it to be safe when doing that, because safety first. Then the last thing we're going to do is database. Oops. Exit. Okay, cool. Accidentally pushed the wrong buttons. Database.close. Then we're going to close that connection because we're just going to pop in there to create it, and then we're going to close it out. So that's our initializing function. So I'm going to copy this over because we're going to do the same thing on grocery side. So instead of to-dos, we need to do glist. Ta-da! That one's all initialized. And then to test it, we're going to create a dunder main statement so that when we run just grocery.py or just todos.py, it'll create a database and add a single item to it so that we can make sure it's working. So below this function, create a little space, and we're going to add our dunder main. So if underscore name, name equals double underscore main double underscore. And here we're going to run initialize, which is a function. And then we're going to do to-dos dot create to do, and now we need to pass in a title. Let's do walk the dog. And then the location, which is a single letter. We're going to do O for outside or outdoors. I'm going to copy this part over. So our dunder main and our initialize function, because our function in the grocery.py file is the same name. So copy that over. Oops. Okay, so we're running initialize, and then over here we need our glist dot create item, and our item we need a title. So let's do peanut butter, and then we need a description, large one for Jethro's. There we go. Large one for Jethro's treats. And save. Okay, that's it. That's it. You have created the model to the database. You've created a function to initialize your database so that it connects, it creates the database, creates the tables, and then inside our dunder main, we're running that function so it creates our database, and then we're adding a single item to it so that we can check and make sure it's working. So let's try running it. I'm a little hesitant because it wasn't popping up these different function names when we were creating it, so we're about to find out right now if my Phee install worked or not. So doing it live. Pip environment run python todos.py. Okay, so what we should see if it's going to work is on the left over here, probably in this area, is going to, a file's going to pop up. It's going to be grayed out like this one is, and it'll say todos.db because it's creating this database. If that doesn't happen, then something's wrong, and it'll definitely tell us here in the terminal. So fingers crossed, everyone. For luck. Hey, it works. Okay. That's always nerve-wracking when you are typing things that it should be pulling up on its own and they aren't happening. You're like, oh, is it really connected or not? But it's connected to Phee. So our to-dos database is there. Now, how do you check that our single item down here is actually inside of the database. So inside the terminal, so I'm going to move this, nope, there we go. I'm going to move this all the way up so we can see it real close. So these are the commands you run inside your terminal to hop into the SQLite little shell that it has, so you can kind of interact in the shell with your database. Okay. So it's going to be SQLite 3. I believe that might just be a Mac thing, the 3, but it could be for both. So I'm going to put the 3 here. If it doesn't work, then we just do regular SQLite, and then SQLite 3 is Mac only, and regular SQLite is Windows, but we'll see right now. And then you need to put in the name of your database, so todos.db. Todos.db. Okay, let's try SQLite todos.db. Oh no, it's not going to find it. SQLite. Oh, do I have to capitalize something? Let me check on my computer. Give me just a second. I had a really long command written out, and I need to delete it. Nope, it was doing it all lowercase. So that means it's time to Google. So this isn't necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes it's good to show everyone how someone will work on these things. So SQLite, and let me just copy what it is. Sometimes it's easier just to do this. Oops, Control V. See what it says here. See this one, oh, it says to do SQLite 3. Typing SQLite at the command prompt. Save and to do SQLite 3. Let's just try doing SQLite 3. Nope, doesn't like it. Definitely does not. So let's see what it says. Oh, let's try maybe a / SQLite 3. / Lite 3 todos.db. Nope, does not like that one either. They did a .exe. Down. Oh, they're using something else that's installed. Okay, so let's try the / SQLite3.exe. So all I did was an up arrow to bring back that command. .exe todos.db. Nope, doesn't like it at all. Okay, leave that one there. Let's try this one. Command not found. Might have to install SQLite 3. That might be what our issue is too. Let me try doing that just in case. Pip. You shouldn't have to. Actually, I'm going to just use pip. Install. Like, do I need to add 3? I'll add 3 just in case. 3. Okay, let's try it without 3. Nope. Okay, so it's not finding a SQLite. But it is running my database connection. So you could also do, oh yes, it says we do have to do SQLite 3.exe on Windows. Okay, I missed that because I was just doing this. So let's just try without the dot / SQLite 3. SQLite 3.exe todos.db. Nope, it does not like that. That's unfortunate. Some alien. Double click on SQLite 3 command line shell to pop up a terminal run. Starts. And arguments, no database file will have been specified. So let's see. Whoops. Oh, not for me. Okay, so it looks like it's something special on Windows. This is why you test on more than one machine before you start your live stream, because I only tested on my work computer, which is a Mac. But if I can't figure out, I'll figure it out offline. And then when we do our next live stream, I'll remember to start here so that we can, so I can show what the fix was. But I don't want to spend too much time trying to debug because it is working. You can see our to-dos database is here, but because it's a DB file, you can't actually look at it inside of your text editor. You actually have to pull it up inside the terminal. So even though it's going to say command not found, if you are following along and the SQLite 3 todos.py worked for you, and you got into the shell and you didn't get this command not found, I want to make sure I give you the next commands to see. So if this worked for you, if you're following along at home, and it said the Windows version is SQLite 3.exe, and then do todos. Oops, I did the wrong one. .db. So that's the Windows version. So if you get into the shell, you'll get the you'll know because you'll get, instead of the $, you'll have like arrows like this, and that'll tell you that you're in the shell. The next thing that you would run is .tables, and that'll show you the word to-dos. And then once you do .tables, then you can type in select star. Star means all, so select all from to-dos, and then you'll need to make sure you have this colon for it to run. If you try and run it without the colon, it'll just give you, I think it's like some ... or instead it'll give you like some arrows again, and then that just means you forgot your colon. Type a colon and push enter, and then it'll show you your one entry. So let's test out, just for the creation, let's test out grocery.py to make sure the creation is working. If the creation's working, then this is also working. It's just unfortunate that SQLite is not wanted to work as a command. So that happens from time to time, but sometimes it can take a little digging to figure out exactly why that command's not being found. So I'll dig into that after stream, and then I'll share with you all what I figured out. So then do a couple up arrows. So we ran todos.py, so pip env run python, and we want to do grocery.py. So if this works, installed through, no, so grocery.py, so remember our grocery, click over here, oops. It is called glist.db, so it'll pop up over in this area if it is working and our database gets created. So again, fingers crossed, hit enter, and you see our glist database was created, and then it grayed out because we added it to our get ignore. So both of our databases are working, and scroll down here, both of our create methods are happening. It's just unfortunate that my SQLite command is not wanting to work. I'm super bummed. I feel like maybe I'll just hold up my computer because it's working on this side. I'm going to do that so y'all can actually see what it looks like and prove that I do know what I'm talking about sometimes. Sometimes I run into an error, but every developer does. So this is just what happens. So I will pull up on here. I need to go to system preferences, and I'm just going to make my, it's not liking that. There we go. Settings. Oop. Just get to font size. Let's do, that's fine. Let me get to my text editor. Font size. A lot of the settings in here. Terminal font. Okay, let's do 24. Okay, there we go. That's much bigger. And I'll actually make it a little bit bigger. I'll do 30. Okay. There we go. So I'm going to do it on this computer just to make sure that y'all see that it does work. It is working. So let me erase this. Let me hit clear. Okay, so I'm going to do SQLite3 to-dos.py. Okay. This is a really, rigged up version to see it, but I'll put it up here as close as I can to the camera. So this is what the terminal will look like when you have entered the shell, the SQLite shell. So it'll have this popped up after you type in SQLite3 to-dos.db. Oops, did I do db? I did pi. That's my bad. I did the wrong one. .exit will get you out of there. SQLite3 to-dos.db. There we go. So same thing, it inputs the same thing in there. Then I'm going to run .tables. And you can see towards the bottom here, oops, wrong hand. Right down there it says to-dos. So that's showing that our to-dos database is there. And then I'm going to run select star means all from to-dos. Oops, and I did forget my colon, so do my colon. And then this one, I had something about mopping the floors, so it's a little bit different. And I realized I should bump up the font a lot because this is in a tiny space down there. So let me do that real quick. Terminal font, let me do it like something really big. Let me go that big. It's 100. Let me try 200. I don't know if it got any larger. I'll pop it up just in case it got big enough for someone to be able to read. But it is still really tiny. Okay, that's too tiny. But it is working. I promise it's working. So for me, on my to-do list is to get the SQLite command working on my desktop here so that I can show that to y'all on this side next time. And in general, for next time, what we're going to be working on is we finished off these 3 to-dos. So we created the database model, we created the database, and we created the ability to add items to the database. So let's delete those out. I'm going to do the same on my to-do side. Scroll up to the top. Control S. Okie doke. So then next time we're going to be adding in Flask, which is how we're going to be able to see, actually see our app. So we're going to be able to use a template, which is going to be an HTML file. And it's just going to be basic for right now because we're still working on the back end. So we're just going to have an HTML file that maybe has a couple things on it, but we'll work on the HTML side of things a bit later. So we'll add Flask, we'll add our routes so that we can read, update, delete our different things inside for our to-dos and for our grocery list, and work on connecting our weather and our calendar events. And we're probably going to do that all here in app.py. So we're going to be working on routing with Flask starting 1 month from now, which, as a heads up for everyone, We are doing kind of more of a rotation with our live streams moving forward. So I will always be the fourth week of the month. July next month is kind of a bit funky. It kind of has kind of like 5 weeks in a month, so I'll be the second to last week. So otherwise, I'll be the last week of the month. So gets a little funky when there's 5 weeks in a month versus 4 weeks. So, but I'll be here to let y'all know when that date is. Actually, I'll pull it up here so I remember exactly what date that is. So today is the 22nd. The next live stream for me will be the 20th of July. So that's when we're going to keep working on this. So the next live stream will be next week, and that'll be Hope. And I believe she's going to be talking about some questions from students, design questions. So keep an eye out on our social media channels, and that's where we'll announce what that is. In case I got that wrong and that's not what she's doing next, keep an eye on those places. But yeah, you guys created your models and your database today. Awesome job. So we'll be jumping into Flask next week, or not next week. I keep wanting to say next week, next month, and we'll keep working on this project. As a heads up, when it comes to the CSS and HTML, I'm gonna have pieces that we'll do together, but just because, especially with me, CSS can get very nitty gritty. I want to make it so that we can, complete this project together this year. So if we were to code out every single piece of CSS and get really nitty gritty into that, I feel like we would be coding into next year. Especially for me, we'll be doing once a month. So as a heads up, I'm gonna kind of pre-code some things. I have some other things that we'll do together. So keep an eye on the GitHub repository. I'll update that as we go along so that it's always ready for you to pull it before the next live stream so that you can follow along if you want to. But anyways, thank you all for hanging out. I'm sorry my SQLite command didn't work, but I'll figure it out. That's one of the perks of being a developer is now I get a new puzzle to go play around with. So it's part of the fun. It's one of those things when it pops up, try not to freak out, try not to, get frustrated, try not to want to flip table, see it as just another puzzle, just another piece of the developer pie that you get to learn and figure out and debug. So keep working hard, everyone. I know the world is crazy right now, but I hope these live streams are at least a little bit of fun and distraction and, get to learn something and hang out for an hour. So anyways, keep rocking it. Reach out in social channels, or if you're in one of our tech degrees, come see me in the UX tech degree or in the Python tech degree. Come say hi. I'll be hanging around, and I'll see you all in 1 month. Keep being awesome, everyone. Have a great rest of your day or night, depending on where you are in the world. I'll see you all in a month. Bye, everyone.